Hello guys, it's Deepak Shukla here again, founder at Serpwizz, and we're back today to talk about IP address canonicalization. If there's something you've seen on a report and you're thinking, what the hell does that even mean? I wanted to break it down for you so you can communicate it effectively to your client. Now, I'll be honest, I'm not an extreme expert on this, but I probably know a fair amount, so I wanted to walk you through it. So I run a report for Serpwizz, well, rather for pearllemon.com. That's my SEO agency. And here it says that we couldn't find any IP canonicalization. Without this, your IP address and domain name might experience redirection issues. So what does that mean in practice? Because I appreciate that that's not the full extent of it. So your IP address is ultimately your internet protocol address. It's the address for your actual your modem or your Wi-Fi, if you like, in your house. So for example, what is an IP address? Here we go. What is an IP address in simple terms? Is a unique address that identifies a device on the internet or a local network. Stands for Internet Protocol, okay, which governs the format of the data sent via the internet or local network. So I've got a local network and I've got an IP address, right? So what is my IP address? What is my billing address? What is my IP address? I've got my IP address here, okay? So you'll all have a public IP address that you can give to people, okay? And that will tell you the rough area, and you know it does locate an actual internet provider called the Internet Protocol address. So that's IP address. Now, if websites also have, do websites have IP addresses? Okay, so every website on the internet is not found by its domain name, but it's by IP address. Okay, and this depends upon ultimately, you know, if it's being shared, if you're using more than one website, and whether it's unique, etc. And ultimately, this is how websites communicate with each other through the IP addresses, because that is the address of where that website lives, and it's like all of these IP addresses that communicate with each other. So you'll have an IP address for a website, and really what you want to have is via the htaccess file, you want to have set up a redirect going from your actual IP to your website, because otherwise you get, and this is, you can get, by the way, you can go into tools in here and you can look individually at websites, so it's quite useful. We've got 25 odd tools, and you go over to IP address, and in here again I think we should give you some information. Bear with me a second. We'll put in Pearl Lemon here just to have a look at what comes up. And we couldn't find any IP canonicalization. See our tooltip. Redirects canonicalized IP address to the domain name. So basically, it will prevent you from having copies of your website that exist online. So we failed that, which is interesting. And there may be other complexities to it that I need to discuss with the team, because that's something that is a challenge. And if we go over to, for example, here, what is IP canonicalization and URL canonicalization? We'll look specifically at IP canonicalization. As we said, it's a process of redirecting the IP addresses to the main domain name hosted with it. It saves your website from being duplicated, okay? And that's copied content, okay? And that can cause a lot of issues, of course. And to set it up, you need a dedicated IP address for your website, and then you need a rewrite rule. So I think that we are on WPX, so maybe that's why we don't have a dedicated IP address. And I think that we've got a separate server for Serpwizz, I believe, at the moment. So that, in theory, should resolve. That in theory should be different for Serpwizz, because we've got a much heavier service load and all of that kind of jazz. So if we went to serpwizz.com, just type that in. Oh, and please enter proper URL. Oh, we've got a developing tool. Painful. Okay. Give me a second. You'll see me live doing it right now. So we couldn't find any IP canonicalization there either. So that's something that I need to check with the teamio. So it's something that you should definitely talk to with your team to investigate more. As I said, you can have a look in your htaccess file to get a sense of it, and replace this part with a dedicated IP address, and replace that with your actual domain name. So there are other complexities to consider. Points to remember: setting canonicalization, which is where the original content exists, that you would benefit from going over your development team with this to make sure that you're implementing it appropriately. So as I said, I know a fair amount about it. There are many, many layers to this, but just to give you enough insight to talk to your development team, your own SEO team, or potentially your client who's wondering what this is. All right, catch you in the next one, guys. Thanks.